I woke up to the sweet scent of the morning mist, that damp and familiar aroma that always lingers over our village in the early hours of the day. My room was still dark, illuminated only by the soft glow of the luminescent stones embedded in the ceiling, a practical invention of the gargoyles, who specialized in absorbing and storing light during the day to release it at night. I stretched my limbs, feeling the numbness slowly dissolve, and then got out of bed. My claws lightly scratched the wooden floor, and my tail instinctively swayed to keep my balance as I stood up. Outside, the village streets were already coming to life. The rhythmic sound of the batfolk's wings crossing the sky blended with the deep laughter of trolls carrying stones for the houses under construction. The market would begin soon, and my mother would already be in the kitchen, preparing our morning meal. My family is ordinary, at least here. My father is a Wendigo, my mother has Banshee blood, and I've never been quite sure what I am. My grandfather used to say I resembled the ancient forest spirits, but my skin is thicker, my teeth sharper. Perhaps I am a mix of something older. But to be honest, that never really worried me. In our village, it's not uncommon for different bloodlines to intertwine. I left my room and went down to the kitchen, where my mother was already standing, stirring a dark, thick broth in a cast iron pot. The steam rose in lazy spirals, filling the air with a strong scent of herbs and meat. "Sleep too much, and you'll miss the best part of the day," she said without turning around. Her voice was calm, but always carried a hint of warning. I grabbed a piece of cured meat from the table and took a bite. "Seems like an ordinary day," I remarked, glancing out the window. Outside, the village was moving at its usual pace. "And may it stay that way," my mother replied, finally turning to face me. Her pale, almost white eyes had a strange gleam. "But stay alert." She always said that. Stay alert, stay prepared, don't be caught off guard. But I never saw a reason for such caution. Our village was peaceful. The residents helped each other, and the different species lived in harmony, each fulfilling their role. The ogres tended the crops, the gargoyles guarded the walls, the banshees kept the ancient records, and the specters patrolled the roads. It was a perfect balance, as steady as the cycle of the moon. After eating, I headed to the market. The wooden stalls were arranged in a large circle in the central square, and the merchants shouted their offers, advertising everything from rare bones to herbs that glowed in the dark. A fawn sold vials of red nectar, promising instant vigor, while a kobold sharpened obsidian blades. I passed a group of goblins arguing over a new type of poison, apparently strong enough to paralyze a troll. My eyes drifted to the center of the square, where the council was gathered. They were the village leaders, representatives of each race that inhabited our territory. In the middle of them, seated on an ornate stone chair carved with ancient engravings, was the elder, a being whose exact form no one could describe. Some said he changed constantly, adopting the faces and features of extinct creatures. Others believed he had always had that undefined appearance, something between a nightmare and a formless shadow. He rarely spoke, but when he did, everyone listened. The hierarchy within the village was clear. The council made the decisions, the guardians protected the perimeter, and the merchants and workers kept the village running. Everyone had their place, their role. I spent the day helping an old troglodyte blacksmith forge new bone and metal blades for the village warriors. It was hard work, but comforting. The heat of the forge, the sound of the hammer striking the anvil, the feel of the metal shaping beneath my claws, all of it made me feel like part of something greater, something that had existed long before me and would continue to exist long after I was gone. When night fell, I returned home. The village was slowly settling down, with torches lighting the stone streets. A few hooded figures walked in silence, murmurs in ancient tongues escaping their lips. The banshees chanted funeral hymns for the souls that still wandered. I hugged my mother before heading up to my room. My father had not yet returned from his patrol, but that was not unusual. He always said the village's safety depended on constant vigilance. I lay down on my bed, feeling the weight of exhaustion settle into my bones. Our village was peaceful. Our village was safe. And yet something lurked in the shadows. Something that everyone avoided mentioning, but that, in some way, was always present. But I had no reason to worry. Not yet. I woke up to a sound. At first, I thought it was distant thunder, the muffled roar of an approaching storm. But then came another blast, closer, louder. The walls of my room trembled, and I heard screams outside, unlike anything I had ever heard before. I jumped to my feet, my heart pounding. The scent of smoke filled my nostrils. I ran to the window and saw the flames spreading across the village. And then I saw them, pale creatures covered in strange fabrics, advance through the square, holding metal objects that spat fire and thunder. They had small, hard eyes, mouths twisted into grimaces of hatred, and in their hands those terrible weapons roared like crazed beasts, knocking down anyone in their path. The inhabitants were dying. The ogres, so big and strong, were falling one by one with burnt holes in their chests. The banshees tried to scream, but their voices were silenced by the deafening blasts. The gargoyles tried to fly, but were ripped from the sky by those invisible lightning bolts. The air smelled of iron and ash. I ran down the stairs, stumbling over my own feet. My mother was at the door, pale, her eyes wide open. "What's happening?" I asked, but I already knew the answer. "They found us," she whispered, her voice trembling. "They found us. The guardians tried to protect the village, but were struck down without mercy. I saw a specter try to pass through one of the invaders, but the creature just laughed and shot its weapon, scattering the specter's ectoplasm on the ground like dust. "There!" one of the creatures shouted, pointing in our direction. "Burn everything!" I felt my mother's hand pulling my arm. "We need to run. Let's finish these monsters. None should survive." My mother pulled me back, her eyes pleading for me to run. I wanted to fight. I wanted to go after each of them with my own claws, but fear held me back. We ran. I saw terrible things that can only be seen in the worst nightmares. All those inhabitants, they were good and peaceful. They didn't deserve this. The ground was red. The square, once full of life, was now covered in corpses. The villagers were gone. And those creatures kept calling us monsters. We kept running until we reached the village gate, but the invaders were already everywhere. They had cold, empty eyes, no remorse. I could hear their voices, their cries of hatred. "Fire! Don't let any escape! They don't belong in this world." My mother turned to me, holding my face with both hands. Before I could react, she pushed me into a gap between the stones of the wall. I fell, rolling down a narrow path that led us out of the village. The last thing I saw before the world went dark was my mother turning to face the creatures. And then, another thunderclap, and silence. I don't know how long I ran. The forest enveloped me, hid me, but the pain inside me had no place to hide. My chest burned. My eyes were on fire. When I finally stopped, my body was trembling. I curled up between the roots of an old tree and cried. Everything is gone. My home, my family, my people. They called us monsters. They said we were abominations. But the real monsters were them, the humans. And now I am the last one left. But they made the grave mistake of not properly searching the forest, the grave mistake of not noticing me following them to their habitat. Now I live among them, hidden in the cold, filthy holes, but I'm here. Right now, I'm watching a happy family eating alone in a park. My stomach growls. They called me a monster. Now I will show them what a true monster is. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe for more.